Hello my beautiful bookish friends, and welcome to another video. My name is Kathleen, and in this little corner of the internet we talk about all things books. And in today's video I'm going to be giving my March reading wrap up and yapping about all the books that I read in March and what my ratings were. So let's jump into it. So in March, I read a total of 10 books, and of those 10 books, there were 5 that made a really huge impression on me and that became my favorites. And first up, when it comes to my favorites, let's talk about my book of the month, which I selected Black and Blues, How a Color Tells a Story of My People by Imani Perry. So in this book, this is a profound reflection of the complex history of the African diaspora and how the color blue is woven into the fabric of Black culture and history. And this was such an eloquently written and explored story and book. I love the history. I felt it was very affirming. And just, I don't know, it made me feel so proud and just of my culture and just Blackness and being a Black woman in my culture. It just, I don't know, it really affirmed me and really just at the same time broke my heart when you think about how Black people were treated throughout history. Just the oppression, the racism, just how everything impacted us through the transatlantic slave trade to slavery, through just how even in Africa as a country, the things that they have experienced via colonialism and just all these different things and how it impacts Black people, not just Black Americans, but just all people of African descent. And the way that she was able to cover the different kind of like, I don't know what would you say races, or the different presentations of Black people, from Black Americans to Blacks in the Caribbean and in Jamaica and Africans in Africa. Just the way that she was able to explore Blackness as a global phenomenon and our culture and the things that make us distinct and unique, and really driving home the point that we are not a monolith and that we are all very diverse because of our environments and where we are from, and you know, all of these different things. It was just an amazing book. I really loved it, really enjoyed it, gave it 5 fabulous stars, and I highly recommend it to anyone that kind of wants to learn more about Black history and to also have it kind of seen through this unique perspective as it pertains to the color blue and how it really is kind of enmeshed throughout our culture and our history. Very fascinating, very much enjoyed this book. When it comes to the most memorable book, I would have to give that title to Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson, because this book is something that I think about frequently and it has left such a major impression upon me. So in Good Dirt, it's following 2 public family tragedies. Ebby and her family must confront their past as they reflect on their family history via a treasured family heirloom. And I am a sucker for multi-generational family kind of like drama or kind of sagas. I really enjoy those, and this is no exception to that rule. It was so well written, so well executed, fairly enjoyed it. I really appreciated how well Charmaine Wilkerson was able to write this story with multiple POVs. Sometimes when you have a multiple POV story, it can be a little convoluted and it can be a little overwhelming because you're trying to understand all these various different characters and keep up with them, and it can be a little overwhelming for the reader. But I found that she did this so well, so tastefully done, where it didn't feel overwhelming and it all felt interconnected and interwoven into this central narrative and this central story as it just moved things along. And I don't know, it gave me better scope, better understanding of not just each of the individual characters, but of the entire situation as a whole. And I really appreciated and enjoyed having that better kind of understanding of the story. And I thought that it was so well done. Also, I loved Abby. She is like my new favorite character. I loved how she was written to be such a dynamic and multi-layered person. And I also love that she wrote Abby with, despite a lot of the trauma that she has gone through, and kind of like the brokenness and the fact that she's kind of stuck in her healing journey, she still made her a very strong woman who had a strong sense of identity. And I would like to say this strong ability to know her limits and understand her boundaries and be able to enforce that in her relationships, whether it's with family or with other people. She was very good at finding her boundary and eliciting it and enforcing it and saying, you're not gonna push past this, when it came to a lot of these situations in her life. And I really appreciated seeing that. I also appreciated that she wasn't just kind of a pushover. And when it came to certain situations in her romantic life, when her partner revealed to her the kind of person he was and his character, she didn't just fold because there was kind of an apology or whatever. She's like, no, you showed me exactly who you are, and I'm not ever gonna fall for that again, because I saw all I needed to see, and I am done. And I appreciated that she just wasn't overcome by nostalgia or emotions and just fell back into a situationship with this person, but she instead she stood on business, and she stood firm and resolute in the fact that she was going to do what was best for her. And I really enjoyed that. I also enjoyed that this story centered on storytelling within this family, and the way this family heirloom that they had was so a central part of their kind of culture as a family, and how they relied heavily on storytelling to kind of influence and give each family member this sense of who they were, this identity. And you can see how in so doing this, they were able to really kind of develop their own sense of identity, develop who they were, and just be strong and resilient despite a lot of the traumatic circumstances and situations that arose in their life. They always were resilient and always found a way to thrive and to move forward in their lives. And I enjoyed reading that, especially about a Black family. I just found that to be so affirming and so empowering. I gave this book 5 fabulous stars, of course, and yeah, really enjoyed it. Next up, when it comes to best debut novel, I give that title to You Are Fatally Invited by Andy Pliego. And with this, it is a locked door mystery where 6 successful thriller authors are invited to an exclusive writer's retreat by renowned author J.R. Alastor, only to discover sinister games are afoot leading to murder. And what a delightful thriller. It kept me on the edge of my seat. I could not figure things out for the life of me. It was very propulsive. It was action-packed. There was so much intrigue and kind of mystery surrounding everything. It was not what I thought that it was going to be. There was never a dull moment. I found the characters to be, they were kind of like tropey, but at the same time, I appreciated, I don't want to say I appreciated, but I found like they were still developed very well, and they were also very well written and complex considering that. And I enjoyed reading about these characters. Perhaps most surprising to me, my favorite character was Fletcher, who was the epitome of an unlikable character, but he was so well written and so perfectly executed for his role in the story and for his kind of characterization. It just fits so very well and was so well executed that I actually enjoyed reading from him, or reading about him and being in his point of view, because he was just so well crafted, and he really was essential to me to this plot and this storyline, and I appreciated reading about him. The conclusion was also quite interesting. Wasn't what I was expecting. Did not really see it coming. I couldn't piece everything together, but it was a very fun story, very good mystery thriller. I really vibed with it. I enjoyed it and I had a really good time, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Highly recommend it if you enjoy kind of a locked door mystery, in a modern take of a locked door mystery that gives you kind of those Agatha Christie vibes. You will definitely enjoy this one. Next up, when it comes to books that had the freshest take on vampires and vampire lore, this award has to go to Immortal Dark by Tigist Girma. I enjoyed this book so very much. So we are following Kidan Idane, who will stop at nothing to rescue her twin June, who was kidnapped by the ruthless vampire Susinios, including living in her home with him. As she plots his demise, she falls deeper into the dangerous world of Uxley University. I love this book. It was so deliciously dark, so deliciously sinister, and it did a tremendously wonderful job of kind of exploring the moral ambiguity that exists within a lot of humans. How far will you go to like protect your loved ones? Like blurring the lines between right and wrong, good and bad, good and evil, and redefining what that looks like for the situation, and kind of seeing the main character Kidan kind of struggle with this moral ambiguity and this propensity to, you know, exert or lead to violence when it comes to doing what she feels is necessary in order to protect and seek the best interest of her sister June. I really enjoyed that aspect. I also enjoyed that Kidan was a petty queen, and it made for entertaining reading. I highly enjoyed that. You go low with her, she will go to hell. And it made for such an entertaining read. And the kind of enemies to lovers vibe of this, perfection. Really enjoyed it. Had a good time with this book. Again, it was a fresh take on vampires for me and vampire lore, with a lot of West African themes and West African kind of like history interwoven into this. I loved it. I gave it 5 fabulous stars. Cannot wait for the next book in this series, which I think is coming out in October or November. Looking forward to it. And my last favorite book of the month, which is coming in with the award for Best Plot Twist, is Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. In this story, we are following a community that, plagued by the disappearances of 2 women and a young girl, are rocked when 11 years later the young girl returns, exposing the secrets this tight-knit neighborhood has kept hidden. This book has restored my feelings towards the mystery thriller genre, because I wasn't feeling it for a while, but I picked up this book and wow. Amazing vibes, atmosphere, immaculate, full of kind of discomfort, of tension, just this feeling of foreboding, knowing that something isn't right. And again, the way that Mary Kubica, her structure when she writes a lot of her domestic thrillers, to me is so captivating and so kind of easy for you to get pulled along into the story. As she kind of starts with, we get 3 different viewpoints in the story. We get one from the neighbor Kate, we get one from the son Leo, and we get one from Meredith, which is one of the women that disappears. And we kind of see with Meredith's viewpoint all the events leading up to her disappearance, and with the neighbor Kate, we see kind of what happens immediately after Meredith and Delilah, the daughter, are disappeared. And we see Leo with his viewpoint after Delilah has come back home. And I don't know, it really worked for me. It kind of spread a lot of suspicion in a lot of different areas, which again, I think Kubica does so good at doing, where you are suspecting all of these different people of having a hand in what eventually goes down. Then you are so distracted from actually what truly is happening and what truly is going on until the very last minute, when everything all comes together and you see the little pieces of information, the little breadcrumbs leading to this ultimate conclusion. And I love that. I love that I cannot really, when I'm reading her books, ever truly figure out what the frack is going on, and I'm left guessing to the very, very end. Loved this. I gave it 5 fabulous stars, and I highly recommend it for those who kind of like a slow burn, slow build mystery thriller. You will definitely enjoy this. So those are all of my favorites. Let's talk about the other books I read this month that I, had a good time with. So first up is The Stolen Queen by Fiona Davis. Now in this story, we are following Charlotte, an Egyptologist who must confront her past as a young archaeologist in Egypt when a stolen antiquity shows up at the Met Museum and another antiquity is stolen, and she's positive the two events are linked. So this was a very fascinating and interesting read that I really, really enjoyed. I like a lot of the kind of Egyptian culture and seeing more about kind of archaeology and how that world works, and also like the behind the scenes of the Met Museum. I thought that that was really, really cool. I really enjoyed Charlotte as a character. She was my favorite character. I felt that, while not necessarily her having everything figured out and doing everything right, I felt that she was a very strong, interesting, dynamic, and assertive female, and I enjoyed that about her, that she didn't necessarily back down. She stood up for herself in all these situations as best as she could with the knowledge that she did have. I also enjoyed that she was just so gung-ho to get to the truth when it came to finding out all these different things that were happening in the Met behind the scenes. I appreciated that she was just very no, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this and find out the truth, and that she was fearless when it came to confronting her past. I really enjoyed her. And we also do get another viewpoint in this from a young girl named Annie. And while she was interesting, and she also had some complex things in her backstory that made her up as a character, I didn't necessarily enjoy reading from her viewpoint as much. She wasn't just as enjoyable, and I think it is because, in my opinion, she wasn't as strong and dynamic of a character as Charlotte. And whenever you have a story such as this, where you have these two characters and you have one who is just really, really strong, really dynamic, and really complex, paired with someone who is not that strong, it kind of makes the story feel a little bit lopsided. But either way, I still enjoyed the story. I still enjoyed everything that was going on. I found it very interesting. It kept a very good pace where things were happening. We got twists and reveals, and yeah, I was satisfied with the end. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.5 stars. Next up, we have A Water Moon by Samantha Soto-Yambo. And in this story, we are following Hannah, who is set to take over her family's pawn shop when she discovers her father missing and a mysterious stranger is determined to help her. So this is kind of like magical realism, cozy fantasy, and I was drawn by just the sheer beauty of this book. It pulled me in, and I wanted to know more about this. I wanted to read this. It looked like it was going to be a delightful read, and the premise in and of itself is very interesting and intriguing. However, when we get to the nuts and bolts of it, it really didn't work for me. And I think it was because it felt a little disjointed. We have this beautiful lyrical quality to the writing and the storytelling, and the atmosphere was just top tier. As she was just kind of describing and building this world, I found it to be very beautiful. The way that she was building this atmosphere is full of just whimsy and, I don't know, surrealism, and I really enjoyed that. However, when we pair that with the flat, emotionless characters and the stilted and awkward dialogue between these characters, and also introduce a romance subplot, that's when it kind of went off the rails to me. I didn't really buy the romance because I couldn't feel the emotion. I couldn't feel the chemistry. I couldn't feel any of that romantic tension between them. And also the characters were just very flat to me and very emotionless and very dry. So it didn't really get me emotionally involved or bought into the story, and I felt that I was struggling to kind of pay attention and stay tied into the story and invested in the story because of the lack of like emotion and the lack of being able to pull me in and get me to truly care about these characters. So for that reason, for me, this was a 3.5. It wasn't the best of books, but it wasn't absolutely the worst. Could have been better, but yeah. Next up, we have The Thorns by Dawn Kurtagich, which was an Amazon first read pick. And this story had me feeling a lot of feelings, and I'm a little ambivalent about what I feel about the story. So we are following an accomplished novelist named Bethany Sloan, who reconnects with childhood friend Stacy, opening a door to their shared past and the childhood secrets she's tried desperately to forget. And when it comes to a psychological horror, this book definitely ticks all the boxes. You are reading from this person who is definitely an unreliable narrator, and you feel a lot of the emotions and kind of the disorientation and the confusion, and you feel all of that right along with the main character. And that makes this, it does create this atmosphere of like tense feelings, foreboding, and just confusion. And I appreciated that aspect of it. The way that it psychologically, of course, messes with you. I appreciated that. However, I didn't like the particular twist that was featured in this story. It is something that I feel like sometimes is common in mystery thrillers and horror to feature this kind of twist, and I didn't like it. Whenever these twists are introduced, in my opinion, it just doesn't sit well with me. So while I believe that this story was very well written, the author did what she came to do, and she accomplished that it was well written, that when it comes to unreliable narrators, this girl was perfect to a T, and that the ending and the conclusion was kind of like wild, and the twists that were coming out of it, the twist itself was kind of wild, but at the same time, it's questionable because I don't know how I ethically feel about that. So do with that what you will. I don't necessarily want to kind of like go into details about what the twist is, because I think it would undo all of the author's work when she was writing and building the story and making it intentionally that way. But yeah, I gave it 4 stars, but it's kind of like a 4 stars where I'm side-eyeing because I don't really know how I feel about that twist. But yeah, it was definitely a time and a book. Next up, I read a short story this month, which is called The Sublet by Greer Hendricks. And in this short story, it is about a ghostwriter who works with a popular wellness coach and reluctantly agrees to rent her apartment and uncovers an unsettling history. So this sounded very interesting to me. And I jumped into this story, just dove right in, just excited to see what this would be about, as I'm trying to read more short stories and read more poetry and include that in my reading. And this just didn't hit for me. So in my opinion, the twist in this story just didn't really have any like shock value or a shock factor to me. It felt very benign, very kind of bland and boring. And there wasn't really, in my opinion, anything sinister that was underfoot in this story. There were, of course, a lot of like lies of omission maybe, and like miscommunication, misdirection, not being fully truthful. But I don't think that in and of itself is a terrible crime. So I just really wasn't feeling this twist. It really kind of felt like a letdown. It felt like we were building up to something that was truly sinister, and in the end, it wasn't really like that sinister to kind of justify the way the main character kind of was acting. But it was a time, it was a story. I gave it 2.5 stars. And the last book that I am going to talk about that I read this month was Democracy in Retrograde by Semi Sage and Emily Amick. And in this book, we are reading an empowering guide encouraging those frustrated with the political climate of our country by becoming active in their community by exercising their civic duty and advocating for change. I loved this book more than I thought that I would. It was so informative and affirming and empowering when it came to helping people who are maybe at this place in their like civic kind of relationship that they're just burnt out, they're frustrated, they feel like their voice is not being heard, and they're at this point of like, what do I do? Should I do anything? And it gives you really good actionable steps about how to actually enforce or to act out your civic responsibility and your civic duties in your everyday life. And it doesn't just kind of give you or throw ideas at you, it actually kind of tells you like, this is your civic personality. Like, this is kind of like what your civic personality is. This is what, like, is it actually that you believe in? How is your involvement level at? Like, can you do like a little bit of involvement, medium, like full involvement? It gives you all of the different information that you would need to be able to kind of decide and determine your level of engagement when it comes to your civic responsibility and being able to do things and to advocate and to fight for change in your communities and in your environment. And I also love that it wasn't just necessarily you going out and joining an advocacy group or going out and, you know, doing a rally or participating in a rally or participating in a march or participating in like protesting. It was also kind of like, if that's not your jam, that's not your personality, and that's not your way of exercising your civic rights, it could be as simple as getting a couple of your friends together and writing letters to your representative, placing calls to your representative, sending emails. It could be something as simple as just like getting more involved in your community via volunteering, finding an advocacy or a nonprofit that you want to become a part of and like spending your time regularly, either donating or actually giving your time and volunteering in these places and in these spaces in your community, making yourself more aware of crucial laws and legislation that is being passed in the local level and the state level, so that you're more aware of like key elections that are coming up throughout the year, that you can make sure that you're informed and that you can go vote and participate in. And I enjoyed that so much. It was really helping people to determine their level of civic responsibility and what they could actually handle. So those that are feeling kind of like stuck, stagnant, or struggling, or don't know where to start, it gives you some key actionable steps on how to actually start. I also love that at the end of this book, it gives you a breakdown of pretty much how the government works. As a lot of us, we are very mature in our age, and we may not remember all of like our US history and like government lessons in school. So this is a great refresher to kind of get you to understand again exactly how our governmental system works, so that you can be better informed and you can be better educated and you can make better choices, and you know about the process that all these things entail and why it can feel like things that are happening on a political level, it takes so much time and it kind of moves so slowly, and how while that can sometimes be a bad thing, it can also be a good thing. So really enjoyed this book. I felt that during this climate and during this time, it's something that is necessary for people that are feeling burnt out, that are asking, where is this person? Where is that person? And it's like, no, where are you? How are you going to be the change and make the change in your community? So highly recommend. I gave it 5 fabulous stars. So those are all the books that I read in March. I had a pretty good reading month. I had a lot of 5 stars. So yeah, it was pretty enjoyable. Looking forward to April as well, hoping to get more books read and to have more 5 stars. So looking forward to that. Let me know, how was your reading month in March? What books were your favorites and that just did it for you, that are like your top tier reads? And what are you looking for in April? Until next time, bye.